The NBA draft is nearly here. Tomorrow night, we are at this point, 31 hours away from NBA draft time. And today's going to be a big video. I was going to do two separate videos, but I said, screw it, let's do one. And we're going to do my final NBA mock draft. This is going to be a predictive mock draft, what I see going down tomorrow night. And also, I'm going to unveil my big board, 1 through 60. Well, technically 1 through 61. And we're going to do that right now. We're going to jump right in because I want to get into this. There's going to be a lot going on in this video. And we're going to talk about a lot of things. So let's just jump right in. We're going to go over to Fanspo. I have created my mock draft over here, and we're going to just go from 60 to 1 and let you guys see exactly what's going on in terms of the big board. At number 60, well, this is number 61 technically, there is one player who was not available on this board who I'm a big fan of. And that's Visvod Ishchenko, who would be somewhere around 42 or 43 for me. So we're going to go with that. I'll add that in as just a person, a point of reference. But at number 60, Rafael Castro, George Washington center, physical, has some mobility stuff, but like good player. Number 59, Darian Williams from NC State. Do everything, small forward. Nick Martinelli is my number 58. Tyler Bilodeau at number 57. Dylan Mitchell at 56. Aaron Nkrumah, who is one of the most fun players in college basketball for me, defensive dog. His defensive upside, he reminds me a lot of Basma Bang. But Aaron Nkrumah, man, the feet on defense are just elite. Jacoby Gillespie at 54. Kylan Boswell at 53. Otega Owe at 52. Malik Brown at 51. Tyler Nickel at 50. Braden Smith at 49. Alex Caravan at 48, which is going to be lower than a lot of people, but I like Alex Caravan enough. Isaiah Nelson at 47. Milos Uzan at 46, who's a player I had such a hard time ranking because I really, really like his game. And I think he can be a very good player in the future. Toby Lawal, freak of nature athlete at 45. Felix Okpara at 44. Jaron Pierre Jr., who's one of my favorite players in this draft class in terms of those explosive, wing guard players. Trevin Brazil at 42, who's another guy who, if you asked me in a week, he might be higher than this. The more and more I watch his tape, the more and more I like him. I settled him at this 42 spot, but like I said, this is a guy who can climb fast, and I'm really high on him. Kadir Copeland, if you want those, on-ball creative guards, I think Kadir Copeland is so much better than people are giving him credit for. He's at 41. He's another guy that's been climbing my board and climbing my board and climbing my board every time I make one of these. Jaden Bradley at 40. Malik Thomas at 39, and this is where some people are going to be like, what the hell? I'm lower on Malik Thomas than the consensus. Baba Miller at 38. Ryan Conwell, who I just love, at 37. Jack Cale at 36. Upsides through the roof, right? Can he prove it on a bigger stage? Emmanuel Sharp at 35, who's a player that I just identify big time. Richie Saunders at 34. If it wasn't for the injury, he might be a lot higher than this. Isaiah Evans at 33. Karim Lopez at 32. Which is another player. It's all projection. I struggle with some of the movement skills. I struggle with the projectability because of the role that he succeeded in the NBL isn't at all what he'll be playing in the NBA. Terrace Reed Jr. at 31. This tier of player between 27, 28, and about 39, 40 is largely interchangeable as well. Bruce Thornton gets the 30th ranked spot. At one point, I thought I was going to have him as high as 28 or 29. I love this kid. I think he's just a pro's pro. There is a lot of Kyle Lowry to his game. Let me just say that. Ugonna Nyensu, who I'm higher than a lot of people at 29. This is where, at 28, is where my actual first-round grades stop. So with my last first-round grade in this draft class, Alan Graves is at 28. Koa Pete at 27. Nate Ament at 26. Like I said, the talent, undeniable. I question whether or not that much projection and that many things that needing to go right is going to be a problem long term. Chris Senak Jr. at 25. Joshua Jefferson, one of my guys, at 24. Subi Ejiofor at 23. If you know my content, you know how much I love players of this mold. Henri Vesar at 22, again, a player that I'm very, very high on comparatively. Dalen Swain at 21. Sergio De La Rey at 20, another guy that every time I turn on the tape, I become more and more impressed. Bennett Sturts at 19. Abuka Corey at 18. Mikel Brown Jr. at 17. Some people are mad about that. Again, I love the skill set. I wonder how it affects winning in the long term. And I am a person that really values that scalability to a winning player. Mikel Brown Jr., he is going to be a fantasy stud. I have questions about whether or not it actually converts to W's in the NBA. LeBaron Philon Jr. at 16. Christian Anderson at 15. Adai Mara at 14. Hannes Steinbach at 13. Jaden Quaintance, again, huge question marks around health and everything else. If that knee had perfect medicals, he'd probably be a top 5 player for me. But I settled with him at 12, but probably the hardest guy to actually rank in this draft class. Yaxel Lendeborg at 11. Merez Johnson Jr. at 10. Keaton Wagler at 9. Kingston Flemings comes in at the 8 spot. And you're going, wait a second, if Wagler and Flemings are at 8 and 9, who jumped? Cam Carr comes in at number 7, which is, again, around where I've had him most of the season. I love this kid. I think there's way more offensive upside than people are giving him credit for. Number 6 is Darius Acuff Jr., which, again, that means my number 5 player is Braden Burries. He represents everything that I love about guard play in basketball. I think his offensive upside is very, very high. I think his defensive upside is very high. I think he is a player that has scalability to a million different roles to affect winning at the highest levels. I think this is going to be a guy that in a couple years we look at how we look at Drew Holiday today. Not the same player, but that kind of same thing, the Derek White, Drew Holiday kind of thing. Caleb Wilson, who was my number 3 prospect until days ago, has moved to number 4. Cam Boozer at number 3. And now for the top 2. I started the season with Darren Peterson as my number 1 prospect by far. By about February, March, I had flipped it. And AJ DeBansa was my number 1 player until today. Because AJ falls to number 2, and my number 1 player on my draft board is Darren Peterson. So that is my big board. I will post a link to it so you guys can look at it and kind of go through it a little bit more thoroughly. And now what we're going to do is we're actually going to do a mock draft using my big board to break it down. And we are going to do a full 2-round mock. If I see spots where trades could make sense, I've got no problem doing a trade in these circumstances. Right, I think there will be trades in this draft. I think that there's going to be a lot of movement in this draft potentially. Will we see a Giannis deal go down today? There's a lot of smoke around Boston. I said yesterday when I was on with Rob, Pincer Basketball, that I thought there was a real legitimate chance that we could see the Boston Celtics do something massive and do something massive soon. I wasn't sure if it was going to be Giannis, but I had a feeling they were going to be diving big. So is there a chance that we talk about a Giannis trade today? Who knows? I'm waiting for that news to come through, but we will see exactly what's going on. But for now, when we're doing the mock drafts, I really want people to understand that, again, this is what I think will happen. I'm not going off of my personal takes. We are going to use my big board as our rankings list, though. So that's kind of a fun wrinkle we haven't had the opportunity to do before. The Washington Wizards are up number 1. I think the Washington Wizards hold on to this pick. I think the Washington Wizards stick with this pick and hold it because, let's be real, they need a bunch of things. But the one thing they really, really need is a downhill attack player. I think to Trae Young, despite the contractual stuff going on right now, I think Trae Young will be back with that franchise. Darren Pearson could make a lot of sense. He could. But they need somebody that can be a downhill attack player, get into that mid-range, and really be a dynamic athlete through the middle. With the first overall pick in the 2026 NBA draft, the Washington Wizards select AJ DeBansa, which, again, you can't really go wrong with any of these top 4 players, right? Like, you just can't. I have DP and AJ in a tier slightly ahead of Boozer and Wilson. That being said, all 4 of these prospects would the top three for sure would rank within the top 10, 12 prospects I've evaluated over the last, I don't even know, 10, 11 years. Even Caleb Wilson's going to be in the top 15 players that I've evaluated over that time. But great players, great opportunities. This is a franchise-altering draft class for a lot of teams. I think there are potential all-stars littered throughout this draft class. Obviously, some of that won't be actualized, some of it will, but we're going to find out long-term exactly what ends up happening in these scenarios. But, and I apologize for the sniffling. I believe I'm starting to get a cold, so I'm trying to keep that to a minimum, but I'm doing my best right now. With the second overall pick, the Utah Jazz, obviously there's a lot of smoke about will Darren Peterson work his way out of Utah? Will they move down or move up? Will they select Cam Boozer because Carlos Boozer works for the organization, et cetera, et cetera? Will they trade massive quantities of capital and players to move up to number one to get AJ Dubnstead? Because obviously Ryan Smith being a BYU booster and everything like that. At the end of the day, Keontae George at the point, he's got a little bit of a hybrid game to him, a little bit of combo game to him. They've got Markkanen and Kessler and Triple J all sitting there in the front court. They need a player who can fill all the gaps, be the mortar for this offense and this defense, somebody who can play on or off ball on both sides of the court, elite level shot making. Darren Peterson's the perfect player for this team. If they draft Darren Peterson, I think this is not only like an improved team next year, I think this is a playoff team next year. The Utah Jazz at number 2 select Darren Peterson. Despite him not wanting to be there, it doesn't matter. They grab him. The Memphis Grizzlies at 3. If this guy's on the board, I think this is one of the easier picks in the entire draft class. Cam Boozer will be a Memphis Grizzly. I don't even think it takes a lot of discussion. I think him and Edey can run such a beautiful two-man game together. I think there's enough versatility in that front court. They're obviously going to have to add to their front court with the passing of Brandon Clark and some of the kind of limited front court help that they do have. Cam Boozer gives them a versatile scorer, unbelievable ball mover, a real winner. Incredible youth that I don't think people bring up enough how young Cam Boozer is. But Cam Boozer goes to the Memphis Grizzlies and really, really gives them a guy that they can lean on for the next decade. The Chicago Bulls at number 4. There is a little bit of smoke around them moving this pick. I don't personally see it. I don't personally understand it. I've heard a lot of people talk about it. To me, it doesn't make sense. I think that they're in a situation with number 4 pick where, is Caleb Wilson the perfect pick for this team in terms of what they already have on the roster? No. They have Buzelis, they have Essengay, they have, Leonard Miller, and all of these long, angular, athletic forwards. Caleb Wilson's just better. That's the reality. Buzelis is a good player. Essengay is a good player. Leonard Miller is a nice player. Caleb Wilson has the potential to be a superstar. Right? Like, we're not comparing similar people. And I do think that Caleb Wilson and Modest Buzelis specifically play off each other really well. In this situation, you have the opportunity now, if you wanted to use Miller or Essengay as a trade chip to go get something else or move back into the top 10, you might be able to do that now. And that's one of the crazy things. Like, if they go to the Dallas Mavericks and say, we will give you Noah Essengay, we will give you what would that be? That would be the 15th pick, the 16th pick, 15th overall pick, and a future pick to move up to 9. I think Dallas makes that deal. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, I think Dallas makes that deal, right? It gives them a lot of long-term viability, right? So with that, all that being said, Caleb Wilson goes to the Chicago Bulls at 4, and I don't think they need to overthink this. I think Caleb Wilson, there's a ton of projection, and there's a ton of development that needs to happen into a lot of areas. But he is a hell of a basketball player at the end of the day. The Los Angeles Clippers at 5 is kind of where the draft starts. Could there be a little bit of jockeying in the top 4? Yeah. Could there be little surprises in the top 4? Yeah, but I think the top 4 players are the top 4 players. I think that there is a very clear delineation between the top 4 and going to number 5. And that's not to say I don't like the players from 5 to 14, because that is my next tier of players. But there's a very clear top 4. The Los Angeles Clippers have a lot of different ways they can go in terms of this pick. they could trade this pick. They could trade this pick for somebody established. They could move this pick for an established star that, really adds to them. They've got Darius Garland sitting there. They've got Kawhi Leonard there. If they're going to keep this pick, who is the player that best kind of fills out those gaps? I have major questions about Darius Acuff Jr. and his fit with Garland. I have major questions about Kingston Flemings and his fit with Garland. I have questions about Keaton Wagler's fit with Darius Garland because the defensive backcourt would be so bad. If I'm the Los Angeles Clippers, I'm trying to trade down, see if somebody will give me an additional asset, and then go draft Braden Burries, because I think Braden Burries is the perfect player for this team. I think he is the perfect player to be fit in here and be able to really just, like I said, he fills in all those gaps between Kawhi and Darius Garland. That's the way that I'd be going if I'm running this franchise. I'm not running this franchise, though, at the end of the day. And I think that Keaton Wagler, with the size, the shooting, his ability to kind of have a little bit of positional versatility and on-ball, off-ball versatility gives him the inside track. I think Keaton Wagler is the guy that they select at 5. And like I said, I really like Keaton Wagler's game. The 20% of his game I don't like, it could end up hurting him long term. I do see a lot of like Kevin Martin in his game, right, which is a compliment, but that's a median, right? This kid has the potential to be Devin Booker at the end of the day. So Keaton Wagler's a great pick. The Clippers grab him at 5. At 6, the Brooklyn Nets. Jordi Fernandez wants dogs. Jordi Fernandez wants players that go and compete for 94 feet and play with pace and like really dig in and like are, really team first guys, especially on the defensive end. I think that's what Jordi wants to build. I think that Jordi's going to lose this debate. And this is not to say Jordi would not want this player, but Darius Acuff is incredibly skilled, incredibly talented, dynamic in so many ways. The competition level, the level of compete, has been a question for a while now, throughout high school and now. He has so much offensive upside that I don't think they can pass up on him. I know some people would want to see Mikael Brown Jr. here or Kingston Flemings here or whatever. Some people have been saying Ade Mara here. The reality is this is another spot where this wouldn't be the pick that I'd be making, but I'd understand it because Darius Acuff Jr. has the highest offensive ceiling in this draft class, right? That's a legitimate thing. He may have the highest offensive ceiling in this class. And at 6, the Brooklyn Nets select Darius Acuff Jr. The Sacramento Kings at 7 gets fun because they need a lot, right? They need a dynamic center. I think they're looking to move off Sabonis. Could this be a reach spot for Ade Mara? Maybe, right? They need guys that can defend at multiple positions. Braden Burries can do that, right? They need defensive, big-bodied forwards, right? Yaxel Lindeberg is there. They can use so much, but they're hunting point guards, and they love skill, and they love shot making, and it seems like they love questionable decision makers. I thought they took a positive step last year trying to get guys who are better decision makers the ball in hand, but they're kind of they're like organizational red flag is that they will choose the skill guy, they will choose the flash guy. So I'm going to slide down my board down to number 17, and Mikael Brown Jr. is the pick to the Sacramento Kings. He just kind of fits their flavor, if that makes sense. The Atlanta Hawks at 8. Obviously, the Atlanta Hawks just re-signed CJ McCollum. They kind of shored up their guard spots. There are guys here that can make a lot of sense. I think Kingston Flemings can make sense here to a degree. I really like the idea of a Christian Anderson fit here, but it's too early for Christian Anderson. The Atlanta Hawks need a little bit more size, right? Onyeka Okongwu does a good job as a center. He's an undersized guy at that spot. I think if they can bring in a player that can play 20 to 23 minutes a night and really pass the ball and be a defensive anchor in his way with a lot of mobility and ground coverage players around him, that makes a ton of sense. Is this a movable pick in this spot? Absolutely. Ansi Salah loves acquiring draft picks. Would this shock me if all of a sudden number 8 was traded for number 15, a future pick, in Noah Essengay? No, I could see that exact trade going down. Would this shock me if they traded number 8 for number 12 and 17? No, I could see that trade going down. It all makes sense. I think Ade Mara makes a ton of sense for this team, and we're going to go with Ade Mara here at 8 to the Atlanta Hawks. He really fills out a spot that they don't really have. there's smoke about the Dallas Mavericks trading this pick. Obviously, today we found out big news. Dusty May has been named the head coach of the Dallas Mavericks. He's left Michigan. There's obviously two Michigan players on the board right now, and Merez Johnson, Yaxel Lendeberg. They're both sitting there. Obviously, Dusty May had his criticisms of Yaxel Lendeberg at the beginning of last year, but he still helped him win a national title. Merez Johnson, the 4-5 hybrid game. They got two centers that they're invested in. They just locked up PJ Washington long term, and Cooper Flagg can play a little bit the 4. I think it's too saturated to pick one of the guys that maybe makes sense with the Dusty May hire. Braden Burries makes too much sense for this team. If they keep Kyrie Irving, Braden Burries is the perfect player to plug into this lineup. If you have a lineup that has Kyrie Irving and Braden Burries and Cooper Flagg and, Derek Lively or Daniel Gafford and PJ Washington and all these guys, Braden Burries is the perfect guy to kind of fill out those gaps. And like I said, be that mortar player that kind of builds everything around. He doesn't need to be fed constantly, and he can be impactful without the ball in his hands in so many different ways, and be a transition monster and run bench units and do everything that they need with some physical size and some strength and some real dog in this game. Braden Burries is the most natural fit almost with any team in this draft. I like the Braden Burries fit with the Dallas Mavericks almost more than any other fit with any other team in any other pick. Braden Burries to Dallas at number 9. The Milwaukee Bucks. Obviously, John Horst loves projectable athletes, drafting Johnson, drafting Tyler Smith. He really, really likes the idea of maybe they don't have firm skills today, but look at this projectability. We know that their owner is a huge booster for Tennessee Volunteers. And we know that they like positional size and length and all of these things. All signs point to Nate Amon. All signs point to him. And personally, I think this would be a really questionable draft pick. I know some people are high on him. I know I'm lower than the consensus on Nate. He is not somebody that is going to help you win games at all for a long time. There's a ton of projection that needs to happen here. Do they move Giannis and acquire an additional draft pick? Does he go to Miami and they grab additional pieces and they have the 13th pick where they can get somebody that can more help out now? Or do they trade him to Boston and they get Jaylen Brown back and they get 27 back and a bunch of future picks and they're able to build things out a little bit more where this draft pick doesn't seem so confusing initially? Yeah, they probably will. So with that in mind, it bothers me a little bit less that they would, in my opinion, reach on Nate Amon here. But at number 10, we slide all the way down my board to 26, and we select an incredibly talented player with an incredibly high upside, with a lot of stuff that needs to be actualized before it matters. So that's the way that they go at 10. John Horst does another thing that I just don't really like. Golden State Warriors at 11. Obviously, we'll see what they do in their center spot. Right now, Brandon Podziemski is going to be starting at guard for them. They don't really have a center, not like a real impact center. They want guys that can space the floor. They want guys that can be physical. They could use rebounding. They could use more on the wing. They could use more in the guard spot. This team has a lot of holes. Cam Carr and his athleticism and shot making makes a ton of sense. I love the fit here. I don't think that's the route they go. Jaden Quaintance and what he does makes a ton of sense here, but I don't necessarily think that that's the way they want to go. Hans Steinbach here makes a ton of sense as well. He's a player that I could see them really, really, really liking. I don't know if they'll necessarily go that direction either. There are guys on the board, that can make sense. I think Yaxel Lendeberg goes here. Yaxel can be... Draymond will not be there for forever. I think Yaxel Lendeberg can do a lot of the Draymond things in terms of play type and culture, right? They're the same. There's a little bit of that in him. There are maturity questions, right? There's been effort questions earlier in his past, that seemingly halfway through this year went away. I think Yaxel Lendeberg is an awesome complementary offensive player that can score in a lot of different ways. I think he's a hell of a defender, one of the more underrated defenders in this draft class. He is older. He is ready to help a team win today. He fills in a lot of gaps for them. They need to go out and get a center now because he can fill in small ball minutes here and there. Him and Draymond make a super fun, active, versatile front court. But Yaxel Lendeberg at 11 to the Golden State Warriors. What we have here, Oklahoma City Thunder at number 12 with just dogs all over the board for them. Like there's just dogs all over the board for them. I think that there is a real thought of Dalen Swain in this spot. He doesn't shoot it as much as they'd like. Just trading Aaron Wiggins away, letting Kenrich Williams go. They might bring him back on a minimum. That's my guess. Isaiah Joe will probably be moved, or Lou Dort will be moved, or both. They're kind of clearing out a little bit of their guard room. Topic, obviously, with another injury issue that just came up. We'll see if Thomas Sorber comes back and how he looks and whatnot. There are a lot of potential pieces they can go with. I think Sergio De La Rey, I don't think he'll go this high, but I think he's a player they would really like. I think Dalen Swain can replace a lot of what Aaron Wiggins did for them in a lot of ways. Could they look for a dynamic on-ball guard that can shoot and space a guy like Christian Anderson? Yeah. Would Hans Steinbach make sense here if they think that there's a chance that in a year or two they don't have iHeart anymore? There are tons of players. Cam Carr here as a dynamic scoring guard can make a ton of sense for this team. They want big physical guys. They don't necessarily know if Sorber can what Sorber's going to be. I know what Merez Johnson is. At the end of the day, I know what Merez Johnson is. And Merez Johnson is an absolute dog on both ends. He plays with their style, right? He is switchable and versatile. I do believe in the jump shooting long term. And culture-wise, he is a leader. He is a man. He is an adult in that Michigan room. Everybody said he was a guy that really held that stuff together, the professionalism, everything else. He fits the culture. He fits the play style. He fits the activity and aggression levels. Merez Johnson, the Oklahoma City Thunder, to me just makes so much sense, and it's a steal for them. The Miami Heat at 13. So much of this hinges on if they get Giannis, right? So much of this hinges on if they get Giannis. The reality is they need size. I think they could use a guard. Would it absolutely shock me if we saw Kingston Flemings go here? No, I could see them going that route. And right now, he is such a good value at the 13th pick because he is sliding on this board. Let's just be real. Right now, you can look at it and you can go, oh my God, he has slid out of this class of player that most people believed he would be. Right, and somebody is going to slide, and maybe it's Braden Burries, right? Maybe Mara slides. Bringing back McCollum really took away the opportunities for guys like that. For a long time, I had Kingston Flemings mocked at 7 to Sacramento. I thought that Brooklyn would grab him at 6 over Acuff. But if you look at the teams, unless the Bucks grab him at 10, I don't think Golden State grabs him at 11. Right? They really want to space the floor and do those things. He's not that guy yet. Oklahoma City, he's very on ball and he's not positionally versatile. Kingston Flemings has a legitimate chance to slide in this draft. And I don't think people necessarily anticipate that there are 3 or 4 teams that if they grab him, they can grab him in the top 10. There are 3 or 4 teams that he'd be, a top 3 option for on the board. Something that I've thought about more and more is the possibility that Kingston Flemings might be the guy that slides. Because if Brooklyn decides to go a different direction, if Sacramento decides to go a different direction, and if the Milwaukee Bucks decide to do the Nate Amon thing, all of a sudden the locations for him become a little bit thinner. The Miami Heat at 13, they need size. At the end of the day, they need some size. They don't have much of it. Will they have this pick in the first place? I don't know. Do they want to go with another guard after just drafting Yakashonis last year? They have Davian Mitchell. Are they bringing back Norm Powell? They have Tyler Hero. The one thing they don't really have on the roster, like Yakashonis can do it to a degree, but it's a downhill driving threat. Is there a team that would want to come up for this pick? Is there a team that would really drive forward to get this pick? And this is where we talk about Giannis Antetokounmpo. Because if Boston's willing to give up Jaylen Brown to get him, I think that Milwaukee would have to then relay Jaylen Brown somewhere else. I don't think they'd be looking to hold him long term. I think that Miami can offer a cleaner deal. I think they could offer a deal that makes a little bit more sense. It's not as sexy of a package, but I think Giannis ends up going to the Miami Heat. And the Milwaukee Bucks will receive, like I said, there's going to be salary ballast and everything else. So you're going to be looking at Tyler Hero and probably Yakashonis and maybe Wiggins in that deal as well. Khalil Ware potentially, like there's a whole bunch of guys that, like, it's going to be a massive deal and all their draft capital is going to be involved. Right now, all we'll do is we'll say that Giannis goes, 13 will go to Milwaukee, and we'll just do the pick like that. The details of a Giannis trade, we can get into that afterwards. But like Giannis to Miami for the 13th pick, probably 3 additional picks, 1 pick swap on top of that, I think is what they have available to them. And then some combination of Tyler Hero, Khalil Ware, maybe Jaime Jaquez, probably Yakashonis. If Wiggins isn't in there, then Jovic's contract has to be in there, but it's going to be a massive package. But 13 goes to the Milwaukee Bucks. And with the 13th pick, the Milwaukee Bucks select Kingston Flemings to play with Ryan Rollins and a fun backcourt there. 14, Charlotte Hornets. This one's easy to me. This is an easy pick. It's Hans Steinbach. There's a possibility of acquaintance. I just think that Steinbach and the rebounding and the certainty, especially with them as a rising team, not wanting to necessarily take a risk on a player with some injury concerns. I think Hans Steinbach is one of the cleanest, easiest fits for a team in this draft class. And at 14 to Charlotte just makes too much sense to fill out their center depth with a little bit of fun versatility to potentially play a little bit of the 4 as well. 15 to the Chicago Bulls. This is another pick that I've mocked several times that I love. They draft Caleb Wilson. Is there a chance they go with a guy like Jaden Quaintance? Yeah. Could they reach on another center? Maybe. They value athleticism. They value it. And right now they have a ton of athleticism. They need true shot making. They need a dynamic shot maker that can play in transition and be defensively disruptive and do all those things. Cam Carr goes to the Chicago Bulls at 15. And getting Caleb Wilson and Cam Carr in this draft class is an absolute steal. The Memphis Grizzlies, they got Cam Boozer with the 3rd pick. All of the bigs, with the exception of Quaintance, are off the board now for that tier of big. Do they look at a guy like Chris Sinak and go, maybe, right? Do they look at an Alan Graves and think that maybe he can be paired as like a hybrid forward or something? Zuby Ejiofor. Zuby makes a ton of sense in this spot. Like a ton of sense in this spot. Henri Vesar makes a ton of sense in this spot. But they're not necessarily the guys in the areas that make the most sense right now. They have lived with John Morant for years. John Morant is a pick and roll point guard. They run a pick and roll system, but he's not a shooter. He's not a defender. They can insulate the defense, but they need shot making. With the 16th pick, with so many good guards on the board, the Memphis Grizzlies are going to select Christian Anderson, the best shooter in this draft class, as their future Ja Morant replacement. Somebody who plays in a similar structure of pick and roll, but the opposite direction. His perimeter game opens up his dribble drives rather than Ja Morant and his downhill explosiveness opening up other opportunities. Both are elite passers. Both can throw similar reads. I think Christian Anderson's floor spacing is just dynamic in this situation. And 2-man games between Christian Anderson and Cam Boozer, Christian Anderson and Zach Edey, is going to be unbelievably impressive. Christian Anderson to 16 and Memphis continues every year, like they do, to continue to have elite times with draft classes. The 17th pick, what do they need? right? They have so much already. Their depth chart is enormous. We don't really know who they're moving off of. I think there's a reasonable chance they trade this pick. I think it's within the realm of possibility. They grab Merez Johnson with this last pick. Something they have been looking for is secondary creating with ball in hand, somebody that can dribble drive, somebody that can defend a little bit of a bigger body with a little bit more length to be able to play a hybrid spot. Aaron Wiggins did that job to a degree. I think that's the type of player that they really, really like, the guys that they really like. There's a dude sitting on the board who I think can do a ton of those things. And despite I'm a little bit lower on him, I think that there's just a natural culture fit. He doesn't shoot it as well as they would necessarily want. But at 17, Dalen Swain goes to the Oklahoma City Thunder. And they end up with Merez Johnson and Dalen Swain, which is just such a perfect Oklahoma City Thunder draft, with two players who just completely fill out exactly what they want to do. And I think you will see the Xavier defensive tape come out of Dalen Swain if he ends up in this situation. I've mocked Jaden Quaintance to Oklahoma City. I think every single time I've done this draft class, if I've done situations where they are keeping their draft picks. Jaden Quaintance, I've said for weeks and weeks and weeks, his spot will depend on how the medicals are coming out. The information coming out is not unbelievably good about the medicals. I think he is sliding. I think that's a real thing that they need to be concerned about, which is unfortunate because I think he's a hell of a player. Like I said, if he's healthy, he's a top 5 guy in my draft class. He's a damn good player. I think the slide continues. I think the slide might go a little bit deeper than we anticipate. But at the 18th pick, Charlotte has a ton. They've got a lot of wing depth. They've got now with the drafting of Steinbach, they've kind of filled out their 4-5 space. They've got that Kobe White contract, and he's a free agent. Do they want to pay Kobe White $20 or $25 million a year to be a bench guard for them, to be a scorer? He was so good for them last year. But is that the amount of money that they want to put into that role in that spot? I think that the option of drafting guard here gives them a way to not have to bring back Kobe White. Maybe you can sign and trade him because you do have his bird rights. They like downhill attackers. They're not afraid of having small guards on their roster, as we've seen from Trey Mann and Colin Sexton and everything else. LeBaron Philon is the best point guard on the board for me, but Ibuka Okori is the best fit for this team. And Ibuka Okori's ability to get downhill and be explosive and take over that Kobe White role, hypothetically, I think just makes too much sense. So at 18, Ibuka Okori goes to the Charlotte Hornets, and they get Steinbach and Okori, which is, again, another team just absolutely killing their draft class, which is amazing to see. Now we get to the fun. The Toronto Raptors. Everybody loves Bennett Sturts. Scotty Barnes, Brandon Ingram, Emmanuel Quickly, RJ Barrett. They want to start giving increased usage to Colin Murray Boyles. Walter's an off-ball player. If they bring back Mamu, that's another guy that gets ball in hand. There's a lot of ball in hand. There's a ton of guys that play ball in hand. And I remember last year at draft time, everybody was wanting 7-2 centers and skill players and shooting and everything else. Dan Tolzman, who I think is fantastic at his job. I think he's a great talent evaluator. I think he has great talent evaluators around him. The one thing he has continually told us is that he doesn't care about, does this necessarily mean it's the perfect fit on paper? They want certain aspects. They want their physicality. They want certain level of dog and toughness and grind and grit. And that's why I told everybody last year why I was so high on Colin Murray Boyles, and why when it got to 9, I said when he slid to there, and that's a slide on my board because I see him be ranked at 4. Don't be surprised if Colin's the guy here. And everybody said, well, why would they draft him? Right? Why would they draft? It's clunky fit. It's a clunky fit because they're trying to build a culture of basketball, and they're confident that they can build out the shooting and the other requisite skills around the culture that they establish. They want toughness. They want physicality. They want versatile defense. They're looking to build something for the future. Would LeBaron Philon make sense here to a degree? Yeah, but then Jamal Shed and Philon aren't playing together. Shed and Sturts, I think, is still a clunky matchup. If you draft guard here, you are devaluing Jamal Shed. his minutes are going to reduce, or you got to move him out. And I think Jamal Shed's a good player, and I think Jamal Shed fits the culture of what this team is trying to do. I don't think, unless a premier point guard drops to this spot, that they're going to go point guard. There aren't really wings in this spot, but what there is the highest risk, most talented defender in this draft class. And yes, he doesn't shoot yet. And you need one of him or Barnes or Murray Boyles to take a big leap in shooting to make this work. I think there are ways you can make this work with a JQ in the dunker. Scotty Barnes is a primary ball handler. Colin Murray Boyles running in short roll. Then you have your 3 levels filled out. The passing, the lob threat potential, everything else. And then on the defensive side, you're getting the scariest front court defense in the NBA. If you compare these guys together, it is not a fit on paper. And that's why you pay a creative coach to be a creative coach. If the board falls this way, this is where the Jaden Quaintance slide ends. And the Toronto Raptors draft the best player in this draft defensively, with red flags, with risks. But at 19, you're shooting for the moon. And the Toronto Raptors select Jaden Quaintance at 19 to fill out their culture. Because again, CMB, Elijah Martin, Chucky Hepburn, they're continually building towards culture. And we saw last year in the playoffs, when shit hit the fan, was it the fun players and the skilled guys that really buckled down? It was the guys that play with toughness that pushed that playoff series to where it went. I think they're going to double down on toughness. San Antonio at number 20, let's be real, they're probably looking at a 4. Somebody who can play a 4-5 versatility spot, needs them to be able to shoot the ball. They've got a million guards. The top players on the board are all guards. I don't think that any of those players are going to be the pick. This, to me, comes down between 3 players, really. I think it's Josh Jefferson, I think it's Koa Pete, and I think it's Allen Graves. Me personally, I would have Josh Jefferson going in this spot. I think Josh Jefferson's a perfect fit for the San Antonio team. I do believe that they will select Allen Graves with this pick. So despite me being lower on Allen Graves, even though I'm an analytics guy, the tape is concerning with the foot speed and mobility and everything else. Playing him next to Victor Wembanyama insulates so many of his weaknesses, and Allen Graves goes to the San Antonio Spurs with the 20th pick. And the board couldn't have fallen better for the Detroit Pistons. The Detroit Pistons need scoring. They need versatility. They need offensive players, a little bit more guard help. I like Dennis Jenkins. Dennis Jenkins is a bench guard at the end of the day. Bennett Sturts is a damn good player. Sergio De La Reyna is super fun. There are lots of guys on the board that I really, really, really like. The reality is LeBaron Philon Jr. fits so well with what this team is trying to do. The craft, the creativity. He shot 40% from the three-point line last year. He has the best feet in the draft in terms of his ability to use nuance and deceleration and step backs. His feet are incredible, right? He puts guys on a string and he abuses them with his dribble. He allows Cade Cunningham to actually have some assistance and take some reps off ball. That is a massive thing for Cade. LeBaron Philon goes to the Detroit Pistons at 21. Steal. At 22, this is a pick that I have mocked several times, and I'm going to continue to mock it. Joel Embiid is a perimeter center at this point. He is a hyper perimeter player. They can afford to have somebody who is defensively versatile, who plays with physicality, who plays in the dunker, runs baseline to baseline, does all of that stuff, the dirty, gritty work. They don't necessarily need that 4-man to shoot. Would they like him to be able to shoot? Yes. Could he shoot long term? Maybe. Koa Pete is going to the Philadelphia 76ers at 22. Because another thing that I know about this Philadelphia 76ers team, now obviously with Daryl Morey gone, who knows what they transition to. But typically they have chose guys who, there is a culture element to these picks. And I think Koa Pete, despite me being lower on him at 22 to Philadelphia, makes a ton of sense. The Atlanta Hawks at 23, Adai Mara went off the board to them last time. Do the Hawks move this pick? They could. They have a ton of depth, right? They have a ton of depth. Is there a team that would desperately want Bennett Sturts in this spot? Is there a team that's willing to trade up for a Karim Lopez? Is this the team that just takes Karim Lopez? Because that's another possibility. Because look at the stuff they like. They like positional size. They like length. They like a certain level of toughness. I worry about the ground coverage stuff with him. Chris Sinak's sitting there. Potential to shoot long-term. Long, angular, athletic. They don't really need somebody to be able to come in and play today because they've got a ton of depth. Sergio De La Rey also makes a lot of sense here as a as a guy that can play on ball, get to his spots, really shoot it, control the play. I think this pick really comes down to Karim Lopez and Sergio De La Rey. And I know some people go, Sergio De La Rey, like most people have him mocked at like 35, 40. He's in the draft for a reason. I feel like he got a promise from somebody. I feel like this is the front office that would like his game, and having him be able to sit there and learn from CJ McCollum for a year and play spot minutes and do all that stuff, I think it makes a lot of sense. Could it be Bennett Sturts? Yeah, like I said, but I think they want to go younger. I think they want to go higher upside. And I think De La Rey or Karim Lopez is kind of the right fit. I'm going to go with my first kind of surprise on the board at 23, and I'm going to draft Sergio De La Rey to the Atlanta Hawks. 24 to the New York Knicks. This one's tricky because I think they really like Bennett Sturts. I think they would really like Bennett Sturts. I think there are guards potentially available at 31. I think there's also centers potentially available at 31. So you have the decision to make of, do you take the big-bodied center right now and then risk none of the guards kind of getting to 31? Or do you draft the guard that can help you not necessarily have to re-sign Landry Shamet? And now all of a sudden you can save a little bit of money. Are they bringing back Mitchell Robinson? That's still up in the air. I don't think there's a team out there that's going to throw real starter money at Mitchell Robinson. So I think that the New York Knicks have kind of the best opportunity to bring him back. Bennett Sturts and Zuby Ejiofor are the conversation for me. Some people would bring Terrace Reed into this conversation as well. But man, Zuby with his switchability, if they bring back Mitch, he can play with Mitch in a front court. If it's him and Towns, he can play with Towns in a front court. I think that obviously OG Anunoby can play down or up in the lineup defensively. Zuby can't play down. Like, he's not going to defend, twos and threes. But those OG matchups that he takes against fours and fives sometimes, I think Zuby can take those. And that's where he becomes such a unique player. When you look at the draft board, it comes down to, do you think you can get a real deal shooter at 31? Or do you think you have better odds grabbing a real deal center at 31? I think that in this pick, Zuby Ejiofor gets grabbed by them. Porty's fine, all this kind of stuff, it's all fine. I think Zuby's the guy. So the New York Knicks select Zuby Ejiofor at 24, and the Bennett Sturts slide continues. Slide for some. I don't consider it really a slide, but yeah. The Lakers, this one's interesting as well, because I think Zuby would have been their guy at 25. Bennett Sturts doesn't really make sense for them. They've got so many on-ball players. Henry Vesar, like I said, this is a pick that I would really consider with this team, just because the shooting. I know Luka's typically done more with lob threat centers. Giving him a real floor spacing center can make his life really easy in terms of his downhill attacks. Henry Vesar also plays really damn hard, is the other thing. Rui Hachimura, probably gone. Do they need a four-man that can play in a bunch of different systems and a bunch of different structures and, run some high-level DHO and do stuff like that? Possibly. Josh Jefferson could make sense. Do they go for a high-risk, high-reward developmental pick? It's not really in their DNA at the end of the day. There are shooters like Richie Saunders who they'd have to wait on. I don't know if they're looking to wait. This, to me, screams trade down. I don't know what kind of asset base they can get in a pick here to slide down from this point. I'm looking at their roster, and I had somebody say, well, they never draft centers. They never go out of their way to draft centers. They're going to have to, because DeAndre Ayton's not the answer. Jackson Hayes is not the answer. They need to go out and get a guy who they believe can play and play now. This is a spot where I'm so tempted to, quote unquote, reach on Onyensu. I think Onyensu, with the potential to shoot long term and the shot blocking and everything else that he provides, I think makes a ton of sense here. Most people do not have him ranked in this range, so this is going to view kind of like a reach. Karim Lopez, Isaiah Evans as a floor spacer could make sense as well. Play on the wing a little bit. This is the hardest pick so far. This is the hardest one that I've had to try to work through because I tell you, Trevin Brazil makes so much sense for this team. Like, he makes so much sense for this team because he can shoot the ball and he can be a lob threat. And I think he can play some big minutes, but if they lose Rui, he can play at the 4 a bit as well. Hybrid forward, ranked lower. Is this a reach spot for Trevin Brazil? Has anybody ever picked Trevin Brazil this high? That's a legitimate question. Because, like, I think in terms of fit, he's the best player for them on the board. I think he has the best natural fit of any player on the board for them. Is there anybody down low? Because I don't really love the fit of any of these players. Like, for me, Henry Vesar makes so much sense because the shooting. You know what? I'm not going to overthink this. I think Henry Vesar, so some Lakers fans are not going to like this pick. For some reason, people are lower on him. What does he provide? He provides multiple elite skills. He is a 43% shooter from 3 on high volume. He is a tenacious guy. He lacks physical strength right now. He's a great passer. You can run so many different actions with him at the nail and stuff because he's such a good decision maker. He's got good vertical athleticism, like for finishing wise. Like he's not a high level athlete. Some of the lateral stuff is clunky for sure. There's no natural fit in this spot, but I think they will bet on the 3-point shooting center, and I'm going to go Henry Vesar here. And I like that player for that team. This one's easy as hell. Like this pick's easy. Bennett Sturts has slid to 26. There's going to be movement in the draft. I imagine somebody, if this slide were to happen, I imagine somebody would try to trade up for Bennett Sturts. The Denver Nuggets could use everything he does. I think Bennett Sturts is an obvious pick to the Denver Nuggets here. The slide ends. Bennett Sturts is a hell of a basketball player. Him sliding is more situational. Here's the thing, guys. From that top tier of guards, one is going to slide. From that medium middle tier of guards, one of these guards is going to slide because there are 9 or 10 high-level guards in this draft class. Right? There are so many, and there are only so many teams that need guards. The Sturts fall happens because I believe that De La Reyna will climb. If it wasn't for that, De La Reyna, it would have been Sturts in that spot. I just think that De La Reyna going to Atlanta makes a ton of sense, right? So would it shock me if there's another team that went Sturts instead? Yeah, like I said, he could have went 24, he could have went 23. I don't think 22 makes sense. I don't see them picking him over LeBaron Philon at 21. San Antonio is not going guard. The Toronto Raptors could very well pick him at 19. That would not blow my mind. Again, the Hornets, if they picked him, it wouldn't shock me. Could you convince me that Oklahoma City would grab him? Probably not, because they already have Jared McCain and guys like that. You know, Memphis, could Memphis be into him? Yeah, to a degree. I think Christian Anderson makes a lot more sense with like the Cam Spencers of the world than Ben Sturts does. Could he fit in at 15 with the Chicago Bulls and the shooting that he provides and the kind of maturity and him and Giddey? Maybe, right? So there are a lot of opportunities. This tier, like I said, I have 4 at a tier break. And then from 5 to 14, I have a group of guys. And then from 15 to 28, it's all the same tier, right? Like that's just the reality. It's essentially all the same tier from 15 to 28. This is an incredibly tight pack draft, right? So him sliding to 26, he's still in the same tier that I had him ranked in, which is pretty incredible when you think about it. The Boston Celtics, do they get Giannis? Not as of today, because I just had Giannis being traded to the Miami Heat. They could use size. They could use passing and quick decision-making, some defensive versatility, and long-term shooting. Chris Sinak does the shooting thing, hypothetically. Terrace Reed Jr. doesn't really fit in the systems they're trying to run. Bruce Thornton would be a lot of fun in this system for sure. I think he'd fit the Missoula culture beautifully. Isaiah Evans, Richie Saunders, Emmanuel Sharp. I think all of those players fit. The reality is, I think Josh Jefferson's the best player for this team. I think Josh Jefferson can play small ball 5 in situations, not long term, but he can fill in because he's physical and he's tough and all this. What they're going to love with him is defensive communication is off the charts. I think he'll shoot it, But amongst forwards and centers, this is the best passer in the draft. I know some people would say Cam Boozer or whatever. This is the best passing big in this draft class. And I think with their system of like really wanting to make quick decisions and move the basketball and make high level reads and find open shooters, Josh Jefferson to Boston is just a perfect fit for me. I love the fit. I think that he would be so great here. I think they have so many versatile looks they can run with him. And despite it not being the sexiest pick in the draft class, I think Josh Jefferson goes to the Boston Celtics. Minnesota Timberwolves at 28. I've mocked this one before. I will mock this one again. I think that AO, they like him a lot. I think they're going to bring AO back. I think there's a chance that these guys try to make a move for something big. Their front court right now is busy, right? I think Béranger needs more minutes. I think Gobert is there, and Reed's there, and Randall's there, and right now all those guys are there. They're looking for wing. They're looking for guard. I think they view AO as more of a hybrid player that can play guard, combo guard, or wing. I think they like an adult who they can put on ball and do things and control things and knock down open shots. And this is a spot where I have continually put Bruce Thornton. I think Bruce Thornton fits the culture of this team. I think he fits the attitude of this team. Like I said, man, a lot of people are wanting to do he's Jalen Brunson. He's Jalen Brunson. I don't think he is, right? And there is the downside that maybe he just ends up being a really good, mature bench guard. He reminds me a lot of Kyle Lowry. Like and I'm not talking about, greatest Raptor of all time, Kyle Lowry. I'm talking about prospect Kyle Lowry. I'm talking about, year 5, year 6 Kyle Lowry, right? Like there's a lot of those similar traits and aspects to Bruce Thornton's game. The toughness, the physicality, the holding up, even if you get posted despite being a small guy. Like I love that stuff. Bruce Thornton to Minnesota is just a thing that's always made sense to me. I like their front office. I think their front office does a good job of kind of understanding value. They have traditionally picked high upside guys with question marks. So is there a possibility that this is the Krim Lopez spot? Yeah, definitely. Is there a possibility it's the Chris Senac spot? Yeah, maybe Jack Cahill is the guy. Maybe they like Malik Thomas, a younger player with a lot of upside. I would totally understand those things because their draft history is a lot of like high upside swings, right? They like their high upside swings, and they've done it frequently and repeatedly. I think this is the time where they just go for a dude that they know can play, and Bruce Thornton can play. Cleveland Cavaliers at 29. Some front court versatility. I think they need another big. I think they're one of the teams that is going to be drafting for positional need. Chris Senac is there. I think Senac, it's a tough fit for right now for teams. They're looking to win. They're looking to have somebody that can come in and play and offer something right away. Senac, it's all projection. It's all what he could be. Like I said, my comp for Senac was Scala Bissiere, and that's both a compliment and an insult because when Scal slid in his draft to like 29 or whatever, the talent was undeniable. It was, can it all kind of fit together, right? There's a lot of things that need to go right for Chris Senac to work out. If he does work out, man, you're talking about an absolute freak of nature. Great measurables, great athleticism, the ability to shoot, all this kind of stuff. I don't think Cleveland's the team that's going to bet on it, right? Like this is a Scala Bissiere, this is a Harry Giles kind of conversation, and that's the level of talent. I am more risk adverse. I think the Cleveland Cavaliers in this situation because they don't have money to spend. Right, they're in a situation where they need this pick to work, and I think they would rather get production. Terrace Reed Jr. is production. He can play in that 5-hole. He can play with Evan Mobley. I think in certain circumstances, you might be able to scheme brief moments where he could play with Jared Allen. Obviously, that's not the most natural combination. I think you'd rather, if like Zuby Ejiofor slid here, I think they'd sprint to the podium, right? More of that 4-5 hybrid. I think if Koa Pete slid to this spot, they would absolutely adore Koa Pete in this spot. But Terrace Reed Jr. for me is the spot for Cleveland. Dallas Mavericks at 30. They've got a lot, right? Their depth chart's fun. They right now on the roster, they have Gafford and they've got Lively and they've got some centers, but they've got centers with some real deal questions. Is this the spot where Chris Sinak, you guarantee him, you get him with the last pick of the first round, you guarantee that long-term contract, you have control over him, you can develop him slowly. If Derek Lively were to go down with injury again or whatever, you have somebody that can, like not do the Derek Lively thing, but fill those minutes and be projectable and show growth. You've got one of the best college coaches in the country coming in to run their program, having Cooper Flagg and having the kind of winners around him and Sinak, and I think he can be pushed in this situation. Are there guys that make sense like Isaiah Evans and Richie Saunders and Emmanuel Sharp and guys that can really shoot the basketball? Absolutely. Does Baba Miller make sense here to a degree? Absolutely. Malik Thomas in this spot could make sense. I think that this is the spot where a team can afford to take a swing on a high potential guy. I think Chris Sinak goes with the last pick of the first round of the Dallas Mavericks. And now we're in a fun spot because the New York Knicks are up here at 31. They drafted Zuby Ejiofor. They need a guard, in my mind, somebody who can really shoot the basketball. Miles McBride is about to get expensive. Landry Shamet is about to get paid a little bit. Tyler Kolek, where do they stand on Kolek and how confident are they that Kolek is a guy that can really do those things? Jordan Clarkson is there. Malik Thomas makes a ton of sense for this team. I think Ryan Conwell makes a ton of sense, especially as another lefty. Emmanuel Sharp is just somebody that can do everything. They are kind of really building towards like that defensive front kind of mentality. Emmanuel Sharp can do some on-ball stuff. He can shoot the hell of it. He defends his ass off. There's a lot of opportunity for them to get one of those guys. Richie Saunders, they have the opportunity to take him and wait for him to get healthy because they're going to have Miles McBride and these guys all coming back. So is there the possibility that they draft Richie Saunders and say, hey, man, you can take the next 6 months off and just build up slowly. He's an older player. He's mature. I think there's a lot of creation there, a lot of stuff he can do. The Knicks would be the team to choose Saunders if they were going to do it. But I really, really look, despite, again, being lower on him and looking at, Jordan Clarkson, and they do like some of these guys, I think Malik Thomas at 31 makes a lot of sense for them. So I'm not high on the player, but I'm high on the player for this fit. And Malik Thomas goes to the Knicks at 31. The Grizzlies at 32, already having just like an unbelievable draft. Cam Boozer, Christian Anderson. This is the easiest pick of the draft for me. I hope that they view it the same way. It would be hilarious to have Cam Boozer and Ugonna Onyenso on the same team because obviously one of the games that brought up the most questions about Cam Boozer and his ability to finish was when he matched up against Onyenso because he does such a good job of playing vertically and doing all those things. Onyenso, to me, is the perfect fit for this team. I think he can do a million different things for them. Baba Miller also makes sense to an extent. I think Brazil can make sense, although I don't necessarily think he's a long-term center. I think he's more of like a true tweener. Are there other guys that go... Would they draft a Nate Biddle or somebody? I would hope not. I'm not high on Nate Biddle. I don't have Nate Biddle in my top 60. I probably wouldn't have Nate Biddle in my top 67 or 68 maybe. I think at the highest I could see Biddle on my board is like 65. Onyenso to Memphis makes all the sense in the world. Isaiah Evans to Memphis makes all the sense in the world. Richie Saunders makes all the sense. Emmanuel Sharp. There's a lot of guys on the board that make sense, but they need additional bigs. Onyenso is the pick at 32. Brooklyn Nets at 33. Darius Acuff Jr. What are they hunting for? They're hunting for talent. Right? They're hunting for talent at the end of the day. Karim Lopez is so unbelievably talented. He has slid to 33, which some people are probably pulling out their hair because I hear some people talking about him at 6 and 8 and 10. Lopez is all projection. If it works, it's going to really work. If it doesn't work, it's really not going to work. I am more of a non-believer than many, but Karim Lopez goes to the Brooklyn Nets at 33. Sacramento Kings, they got Mikal Brown Jr. with the 7th pick, and now they're back. I think this is where they go athletic upside, big, blah, blah, blah. Okpara could make a ton of sense for them. I'm higher on Trevin Brazil. I think Trevin Brazil fits really well with what they're trying to do. Him and Mikal Brown Jr. too could be a lot of fun together. And for me, Trevin Brazil is the guy at 34. San Antonio Spurs already draft Allen Graves. Let's be real. With 35, 42, and 44, they're going to punt 2 of these picks. they're not selecting all these picks. I think this is a situation where they might look to move this pick. I think this is a very strong possibility that they look to move this pick in this situation. Um, there are teams that I think would really, really want Richie Saunders here. I think Richie Saunders has a ton of value in this spot. I think Isaiah Evans has a ton of value in this spot. So let's figure out a trade. So who would want to move up a handful of spots and grab an Isaiah Evans or a Richie Saunders or an Emmanuel Sharp or somebody like that? The Boston Celtics. What do the Celtics have to offer? They've got 40, and they've probably got futures. The Brooklyn Nets, Sacramento Kings, the Orlando Magic. That's kind of interesting as well. So who's a team that could offer futures seconds? I'm going to do a little bit of research here to see what future picks teams have to offer, because I don't want to start making a trade and then realize that everything I've done is bullshit, basically. Denver does not have much in the way of draft pick capital, but do they have multiple seconds? They've got a couple seconds they can offer. I don't think they'd be the team. I don't think the Denver Nuggets would be the team to do this. What do the Boston Celtics have to offer? The Boston Celtics have a ton of second round picks, but not for a few years though, which that one's kind of interesting. And they might be dealing some of those. I don't know if Boston would be the team. Miami, no. Brooklyn, no. Orlando. There's a possibility of Orlando. I'm not sure what they have in terms of second round picks, though. I wish Fanspo would give you a future outlook of draft picks. Okay, it's the Orlando Magic. They like I said, they're pretty much capped out. I think that they could legitimately trade for 35. So we're going to go San Antonio trading the 35th overall pick to the Orlando Magic for 2 future seconds, because Orlando has I don't even know, 10 future seconds coming up. That gives them 2 kind of controllable players later in the draft to be able to work with. And yeah, so they're going to acquire that pick for 2 future seconds, and then the Orlando Magic are going to be on the clock here. The Orlando Magic really, really need shooting at the end of the day. I think Isaiah Evans in this spot makes a ton of sense. Obviously, Duke connection, everything else, but Isaiah Evans gets drafted by the Orlando Magic in this spot at, 35th, 36th overall, 35th overall. Los Angeles Clippers, they drafted Wagler. I think that they want maybe some size. There's no ready-made center in this spot. Okpara can do a lot of the stuff they like. There's a chance that Okpara would make sense. I think Baba Miller would make a lot of sense in this spot, offering some skill and some different looks. I think that Emmanuel Sharp is a guy that they would really enjoy as well. But I'm going to select Baba Miller here at 36 to the Clippers. Obviously, the second round is less of a predictive draft, because obviously players that want guaranteed contracts will manufacture slides and maybe get to teams that are, at 48 or 50 when they should be a guy drafted 34 or 35, because some teams don't have guaranteed contracts to give them, just 2 ways. So sometimes you do see chaos happen in the second round where players manufacture a slide down to a team that probably shouldn't have the opportunity to draft them because they have full contracts available, not just 2 ways. So be aware of that it's not always as 1-to-1 as we think it is. That's just the reality of the second round of the draft, right? So Oklahoma City Thunder, they may make this pick. It would make sense for them to punt this down the road. They just got 2 more future seconds for the Aaron Wiggins one. If they move 3 pieces though, maybe they do want to add 3 pieces in this draft class. That is entirely a possibility. If they were going to punt this pick, they would just be trading for futures. Do the Toronto Raptors, I know we've traded a bunch of second round picks over the last little while. There are still a few. So you know what? This pick is going to be sent to the Toronto Raptors, and they're going to send 2 future second round picks, protected, probably one of them, for the 37th pick. So that's what we're going to do. Is this pick is going to go to the Toronto Raptors for 37. Toronto Raptors selected Jaden Quaintance with the 19th pick. Now I think they want to have some fun and draft, somebody who can shoot, somebody who can come in and defend. Like I said, they really like their culture plays. They really like their guys that are going to dig in and kind of play with some punch you in the mouth. I think that Milos Uzan fits this team so well. I think that they would be a team that would really like Aaron Nkrumah. I think Jack Cale makes a ton of sense here. But the guy that they're going to pick is Emmanuel Sharp. Emmanuel Sharp is everything that the Toronto Raptors scouting staff and front office loves about guards. Is he a little bit undersized? Yeah. He shoots the shit out of it and he defends his ass off. Emmanuel Sharp is, you pair him, then you're just waiting on one of him or Elijah Martin to pop. But I think Emmanuel Sharp is the player that they would identify. Richie Saunders would be the pick, but the injuries, and like I said, there are some interesting medical stuff coming from his thing, and he's already almost 25 years old. Emmanuel Sharp is the guy that they pick in this spot. I would love Ryan Conwell in this spot as well, or Kadir Copeland as well, but I think Emmanuel Sharp is an off-ball player. Makes a ton of sense for them, and that's the move that they go with. 38th pick, Chicago Bulls. Chicago Bulls at this point are just grabbing talent. They got Cam Carr, they got Caleb Wilson. At the end of the day, Jack Cale standing here. He's got the most upside amongst the guards. I think they fill out their roster with a guard there. Cale goes and they take a shot on talent. Houston Rockets, this one's easy as hell to me. Richie Saunders is being picked by the Houston Rockets. Yeah, could they use another ball handler? Absolutely. Could Jaden Bradley make a lot of sense here? Absolutely. I don't think that you want to pass up on the talent opportunity of Richie Saunders, and they have the ability to kind of wait on him. You're getting a potential first-round talent at pick 39 because there's some injury concerns. Richie Saunders to the Houston Rockets. Boston Celtics picked Josh Jefferson. Now they're looking for somebody who can be an explosive scorer on the perimeter that also wants to defend tenaciously. Could you go with a center as well? I don't think there's a center that really shoots it well enough to kind of do this. Ryan Conwell makes a ton of sense for this team. I think Ryan Conwell would be the pick. Jaron Pierre Jr. also makes sense to a degree. He plays really, really fast. I don't know if he would always be the guy that they would love completely. Ryan Conwell to the Boston Celtics. Celtics just had a great draft, by the way. Miami Heat at 41. They're going to fill out the roster now that they traded away a bunch of stuff for Giannis. They're going to need maybe another guard, maybe somebody who can play off ball and really score it. They're going to have basically Bam, probably Powell coming back, probably Wiggins still on the roster, Mitchell. None of those guys are probably still back, but they added Giannis. You want somebody who can score the basketball on the perimeter. A backup big would also be nice here, but they want somebody who can play today. If they're going to draft somebody here, they want somebody who can play today. Do they do something fun here? This is going to be a big reach on my board. Giannis likes to play with shooting bigs. Those bigs don't necessarily have to be premier rim protectors because you have Giannis and you have Bam Adebayo there. I think you're looking for a floor spacer who can, rebound and be a big body and do all those things. The guy that stands out since Brazil is out, it's going to be so weird, is Tyler Bilodeau, who, like I said, I have him ranked 57th. I am not high on Tyler Bilodeau, but as a skill set, he kind of makes sense, and I think he makes sense for a Miami Heat team as well. They do have their single skill specific guys. Tyler Bilodeau and his ability to space the floor as an undersized center goes there, right? And you can insulate him with the defenders you have around him. San Antonio Spurs at 42, they drafted Alan Graves. Now they're back with another pick. I think that they can be kind of however they want to be with this pick. I think you can, if they do keep this one, I think you can go get a guy that you think has high level potential to do a lot of things in the future. I think you could grab somebody that maybe you can punt, right? Do they just, again, sell this pick off to somebody who really wants like a Jaden Bradley, somebody who maybe really wants like a Felix Okpara? I think Okpara here could make sense too. I think Isaiah Nelson could make sense. But at the end of the day, Alex Caravan's sitting here and you can never have enough shooting, and he's got enough size to play some minutes at the 4 as well. I think they double down on shooting, and Alex Caravan's the guy. Brooklyn Nets, they got Acuff, they got Karim Lopez. I think in this spot, maybe a little bit more size. Okpara fits. I think Toby Lawal could be a lot of fun here as well with that athleticism. Isaiah Nelson can make some sense. You know what? I'm not going to. Rafael Castro actually makes some sense here as well. I think that Felix Okpara makes sense here as a big who's mobile and can do a little bit of a few different things. I think Okpara makes sense. We're going to go with that spot there. 44. San Antonio is going to punt this pick. They're not going to be taking this draft pick. Let's just be real about it. Anybody here that would want to get back in? Does Cleveland have second rounders? Does Cleveland have number 2s that they can deal? Because Cleveland, again, being an over-the-cap team, like being a luxury or being a second apron team, they need cheap contract fillers. So is this a spot where they could look to? They don't really have seconds available, which kind of makes their life hard. I do feel... it'd be almost impossible for them to make that deal, which is really unfortunate for them. What about Philadelphia? Because I think, let me just see here. Cancel that trade. I think Philly could have interest in a couple of those players. For the time being, we'll select with San Antonio here. And they're just going to pick upside. They're just going to go for straight up upside. Or you know what? They get a backup guard who can run a second unit and is mature, and despite the defensive stuff, he has Victor Wembanyama behind him. I think Braden Smith makes a lot of sense to San Antonio. I do think that Jaden Bradley makes sense as well, but it seems like I feel like they would want they want shooters though, and like Braden Smith, it's just the shooting is a real hit or miss one. Nkrumah could make sense. They have the ability to develop him. Darian Williams actually makes a lot of sense for what they do. This one's really, really tricky. I'm not gonna lie. This one's tricky. You know what? In this pick, I'm gonna grab Aaron Nkrumah here because they can develop him for a year. He doesn't need to play, and you just get like a potential like monster versatile defender. Sacramento Kings, they got Brazil, they got Malik Brown or Mikal Brown. I think like I said, they are gonna want size if possible. There's no like real centers available at this spot. Rafael Castro actually kind of makes a little bit of sense for them. Not a player I'm in love with. Like Biddle, like could they find interest in Biddle in this spot? They do need more shooting. Oh, you know what? I know who I'm going to go with for the Kings. We are going to go with, where is Tyler Nickel? There's Tyler Nickel. Shooting. Tyler Nickel goes to the Sacramento Kings at 45. Orlando Magic at 46. They got Isaiah Evans. They've got so much depth. They don't really need that many specific things, but they do want guys that can shoot the basketball. Jaden Bradley, they don't really have a need for Jaden Bradley, right? High-level athlete. Isaiah Nelson, if you believe in the shooting, like there's... Martinelli could be kind of interesting here. Darian Williams, with his ability to kind of do everything as well, could make some sense for this Orlando team. But you know what? At the end of the day, Jaden Bradley's on the board. I think he's the best player on the board. I think Orlando is in a position where just getting best players is the move. And Jaden Bradley goes there. And I think that's an awesome draft culture wise, too. If you get Jaden Bradley and Isaiah Evans for the value they just got them for, that's a huge thing for them. Phoenix Suns, obviously no draft picks yet. They can just use another like dynamic guard wing hybrid. They obviously brought back both of their free agents. Sound like they're coming back. So could they use a big wing? This is such a rough wing draft. Like there's just not a ton on the wing. They do like their do it all, jack of all trades wings. You know what? Darian Williams is gonna go to Phoenix. He seems like a Phoenix kind of guy. I'm not super high on him, but like I understand that for them. Dallas Mavericks are back up. Burries, Sinak, double down on athleticism, get more shooting and scoring. Maybe take another small backup point guard who's better than Ryan Nembhard. That could make sense. Because like Kyrie, obviously there are injuries. You know what? Yeah, let's go Braden Smith here to Dallas. I know they have Ryan Nembhard, and I know they have some other small guards. Braden Smith's better than Ryan Nembhard. Denver Nuggets, they got Bennett Sturts. They would love to be able to get a center who can play back up 5 minutes and do all that kind of stuff. It's a really hard thing to find at this point in the draft. Secondary creators, shooters on the perimeter, things like that are going to be so critical for them. Jaron Pierre Jr. can really shoot the shit out of the ball. Toby Lawal is a freaky athlete. They do like taking their swings on big-time athletes, though, too. He's not somebody that would play right away. Malik Brown is somebody that could play with Aaron Gordon. He could play with Jokic a little bit. That could be fun. Isaiah Nelson is like a big swing on talent. Uzon, but you just got Sturts, so like that doesn't make as much sense. Otega Owe in this spot would be kind of fun. If they lose Tim Hardaway Jr. and they lose Bruce Brown, he could be kind of a Bruce Brown replacement potentially. Dylan Mitchell as a freaky athlete that they could bet on. Like that one's kind of fun, and he could at least defend right away, but he can't space the floor at all. But Dylan Mitchell running off of Jokic sets, ooh, that one's kind of fun. Owe or Mitchell? Because like Otega Owe is very fun. But just the shooting. If you're going to draft a non-shooter, you know what? I'm going to do the fun thing. I'm going to pick Dylan Mitchell here. I just think that you put him next to Jokic and like you can end up with fireworks. Good rebounder as well. He can do some of the Aaron Gordon things, some of the Spencer Jones things. The Toronto Raptors at 50, they've got Quaintance, they've got Emmanuel Sharp. Is this where they just get a little bit more length, on ball, off ball stuff? They've liked players with similar builds in the past. Delano Banton. I think Kadir Copeland is a better version of what Delano Banton is. I'm going to draft my guy. I'm going to draft Kadir Copeland here. And if they walk out of this draft with Copeland, Emmanuel Sharp, and Jaden Quaintance, that's a culture-changing draft. That's a culture changer. Washington Wizards, AJ Debance number 1. You know what? Go out and get just a mature guard that can play up and down the lineup. Really, really handle business in a lot of different ways. Jacoby Gillespie's there. But you know what? This is where if I'm them, I'm picking Milos Uzon. He has enough size to be able to play a couple different spots. I think he's a winner. He shot the ball really poorly this year, but I like Uzon as a fit for that team. The Clippers got Wagler, Baba Miller. Let's just go get them. Let's just go get them another athlete. Isaiah Nelson is an athlete. Malik Brown is a hell of a defender. I think Toby Lawal could be a lot of fun for them as well. And Toby Lawal, yeah, you know what? Let's just go Toby Lawal. I think given that the athleticism, obviously they've taken bets on high-level athletes that need to figure out how to really play. So Toby Lawal there can make sense. Lawal would have also made sense for Denver. Houston Rockets got Richie Saunders. You know what? Malik Brown could make sense to them as a defensive guy. Nick Martinelli's kind of a fun fit for them as well. William Kyle seems like a dude that they would probably be willing to bet on. It's just like it's so much tools and not a lot of production. Jaron Pierre Jr. You know what? No. Mature ball handler, can defend at point of attack, do all those things. Kylan Boswell for the Houston Rockets is the way that I'm going to go. Golden State Warriors, they got Yaxel Lendeberg. I think they want guard now, preferably a guard who can play on or off and space the floor a little bit. Jacoby Gillespie is a fun pick. I think Jaron Pierre Jr. fits them. I think he can play in transition and have a lot of fun with kind of the game that he does. I think he also is willing to defend. It's not good yet. The defense isn't good yet, but I think his ability to space the floor and play in transition makes a lot of sense at 54. Great value on that pick. The New York Knicks got Zuby. They got Malik Thomas. Let's be real. This is a team that has continually kind of had energy bigs who are maybe a little bit short on the skill side of things play minutes for them, and they have valued them. Malik Brown, Mark Mitchell, I think would make sense in this spot as well, but I'm going to go Malik Brown to the New York Knicks. Hell of a defender. Chicago Bulls at 56. They already grabbed Wilson, Carr, and Kale. Keep going with just talent collection. Isaiah Nelson is so talented. It's just will it hit? The Bulls grab Isaiah Nelson as well. Atlanta Hawks at 57. They've got Mara and De La Rey just, going straight up, European players. Otega Owe being able to just get downhill and be an attack-based player is kind of fun. He doesn't have the requisite length that they normally just kind of love. Toby Awaka could be fun in that spot. Biddle doesn't make sense with what they just did. See if there's anybody else down here that could be. I wish a guy like Joe Tugler was in this draft for a situation like this. Malik Renault, I don't know if that'd be something they would really consider. This is just to let you know if he was available on the board, Svetoslav Ishchenko, who I have at 42 on my draft board, would be the pick here, but he's not on the board. So that's a tough one. I don't want to just we're going to draft somebody else and pretend that player exists, because that's but like Ishchenko is here on the board at this time. That's the pick right now. You know what? No, let's not overthink this. Jacoby Gillespie is the guy in this spot, right? Get a mature guard that can do a lot of different stuff. And then we're fine from there. New Orleans hasn't had a pick yet. They're at 58. They just need talent at the end of the day. If you could defend, that would be awesome. At this point in the second round, it's very thin. And why not go with a thin center then? Nate Biddle. Get a big boy in there, despite he's rail thin. 59 with Minnesota. Bruce Thornton was picked in the first. I could see them liking a guy like Nick Martinelli who can just get downhill and try to score a little bit. Otega Owe, I feel like the defense is going to click up, and they did like Terrence Shannon. I'm not saying those are the same players, but there is that element of it where I could see them liking Owe. You know what? Or Martinelli, Castro. You know what? No, Owe is going to be the guy here at 59, and at 60, the Washington Wizards. Debansa, Milos Uzan, they want a little bit of size. Rafael Castro is sitting there. I think that he offers a little bit of fun for them, and like I said, not the best mover on the planet, but he can play next to Alex Sarr and do a lot of stuff. So Rafael Castro, you're going to go at number 60 to the Washington Wizards. And there it is. Full 2-round mock draft, full big board unveiled, everything. And let's run through it. AJ goes number 1 to Washington. Then Darren Pearson to Utah, Boozer to Memphis, Wilson to the Bulls, Wagler to the Clippers, Acuff to the Nets, Brown to the Kings, Mara to the Hawks, Burries in the perfect fit to the Dallas Mavericks. Nate Amon goes to the Milwaukee Bucks, Yaxel to Golden State, Merez Johnson to the Oklahoma City Thunder, Kingston Fleming slides to 13, and in the Giannis trade, The Bucks get that pick from Miami and select Kingston Fleming. So their backcourt of the future with him and Ryan Rollins together is beautiful. Hans Steinbeck to the Hornets, which is a natural fit. Cam Carr to the Bulls. Christian Anderson to Memphis. Dalen Swain goes to OKC. Corey as kind of a Kobe White replacement to the Charlotte Hornets. Jaden Quaintance goes to the Toronto Raptors, who are choosing culture over fit. Graves to the San Antonio Spurs, Phylon to the Detroit Pistons, Koa Pete to the 76ers, Sergio De La Reyna goes to the Atlanta Hawks, Zubi Ejiofor to the Knicks, Henry Vesar to the Lakers, Bennett Sturt slides to 26 because there's just so many guards on the board, and he goes to the Denver Nuggets, which is a perfect fit. Josh Jefferson bringing his versatility to Boston, Bruce Thornton, my guy, getting 28 to Minnesota, Terrace Reed, center depth for the Cleveland Cavaliers, Senak to the Dallas Mavericks, Malik Thomas to the Knicks, and Yensu to Memphis. Karim Lopez's slide ends to the Brooklyn Nets. Trevin Brazil to the Sacramento Kings. Isaiah Evans, Orlando moves up to be able to get that pick and grab him. Baba Miller to the Clippers. Emmanuel Sharp to the Raptors when they trade up to receive the Thunder's pick. Jack Cale goes to the Chicago Bulls. Richie Saunders to the Houston Rockets. Ryan Conwell to the Boston Celtics. Tyler Bilodeau to the Heat, Alex Caravan to the Thunder, or to the Spurs, Okpara to the Nets, Nkrumah to the Spurs, Tyler Nickel to the Kings, Jaden Bradley to the Orlando Magic, Darian Williams to the Suns, Braden Smith to the Dallas Mavericks. They get another small guard as a backup guard with him and Ryan Nembhard. Dylan Mitchell goes to the Denver Nuggets. Maybe that pick would end up being Toby Lawal, but one of those athletes, Kadir Copeland, goes to the Toronto Raptors at 50. Love that pick. Uzon to the Washington Wizards, which is another one that I really enjoy. Toby Lawal to the Clippers. Kylan Boswell goes to the Rockets. Jaron Pierre goes to the Golden State Warriors. Malik Brown to the New York Knicks. Isaiah Nelson to the Chicago Bulls. Jacoby Gillespie goes to the Atlanta Hawks. Nate Biddle to the New Orleans Hornets. Otega Owe gets to Minnesota, and Rafael Castro, the last pick of the draft, Mr. Irrelevant NBA, goes to the Washington Wizards at 60. So that's the end of the draft cycle. I will do a second round mock after day one of the draft. So before the second round happens, I'm intending to do a second round mock draft and kind of retouch and do a best of prior to round two. Thank you so much for all the support that everybody's given me. If you guys want to follow my content, please subscribe, follow me on other services. That would be great. It's been a really awesome couple months covering the draft. I'm actually kind of sad that it's ending, but please continue to watch the content. If there's specific things you want to see, let me know. But like I said, give me a subscribe, and then like I said, the content's going to continue to improve. It's going to become more visually impressive, but the fact that you guys have stuck with me and provided feedback and everything else means a lot. So I hope everybody has a great day. Enjoy the NBA draft, and we'll see you then.